At this point, I ask my friend Hugh Dempsey to come forward and introduce the second section.
Thank you.
Hugh?
Thank you. The second section of this morning is, and you know, when you use video, you take it out of human hand and put it into a box. So the hands are willing, but the box sometimes challenges us. But we're on track with this. Two sets of human hands that were very dear to us have left us this year. The Apostolic Nuncio, Pietro Sambi, passed away this summer, and he is dearly missed. He was a tremendous advocate for the Holy Land, having served as nuncio in Palestine prior to coming to Washington, and then was certainly a good friend here while he was stationed here with us in Washington. And we also just, about 2 weeks ago, in the midst of all of this planning, lost one of our volunteers, Lou Mitstang, who always went by the acronym, or the shortened version, Lou MM. Lou MM died very suddenly on a Monday morning after having spent part of the week before working with us on your program book. So look at this program book as a kind of a tribute to Lou for putting it all together for us. So we dearly offer prayers for him, and we miss him. Prince Al-Hassan bin Talal of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan has a DVD message for us. It is in your program book. Prince Hassan is ongoing consultations with the Orthodox Center of the Ecumenical Patriarchate of Chambé, Switzerland. It's with the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue at the Vatican, as well as the Interfaith Foundation in the United Kingdom. He's also the founder and president of the Foundation of Interreligious and Intercultural Research and Dialogue. If I think the point here is that a man of that stature and of that faith and of that placement in that society felt so strongly about dialogue and working together.
Let me just make a couple of statements, and then I'll introduce the next panel. The Christians of the Holy Land session moves into another session called Peace Building, Interfaith Voices of Peace. And just a quick introductory statements. While countries are entitled to self-defense and security, the entitlement must not be satisfied at the expense of others. Before political and military leaders initiate war, have they exhausted all other means for coping with conflict? Have they prepared for peace so that war is not the solution? What is peace? Obviously, it is more than cessation of conflict. Peace, Baruch Spinoza, the Dutch Jewish philosopher of the 17th century, stated, is not an absence of war. It is a virtue, a state of mind, a disposition for benevolence, confidence, and justice. Peace is born by preparing for it. The responsibility and credit for peace rest with all of us. Education for peace, dialogue, and diplomacy are essential for disabling stereotypes, dispelling fear, and creating trust and compassion. A shared vision of peace, if supported by a strong political will and dedicated engagement by all parties concerned, can relieve society of the unknown and set the foundations for a sustainable culture of peace. Peace, along with truth and justice, are central to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In the words of the prophets Isaiah and Micah, and they shall beat their swords in plowshares and their spears in pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. A modern rendition of Matthew says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." In Islam, peace is the rule, while war is the exception. In Interfaith Voices of Peace, the speakers will elaborate on their efforts in advocating for peace, how their faith encourages peace, and their perspective on why peace is possible, even in and especially during this critical juncture in time in the Holy Land. At this point, it gives me distinct honor to introduce to you the panel moderator, Ms. Claudette Habesch, Secretary General of CARITAS Jerusalem and HCEF Advisory Board member. If you please come forward. And the speaker, Dr. Fahed Abu Akel, Imam Yahya Hendi, and Rabbi Arthur Blecher.
That way. Yes. He's on his way, so we need to start.
We will start.
Not in the building? Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. We miss one speaker, but I understand.
The Imam, that's not here.
I understand he's on his way. At a time when military intervention, uprisings, and processes have failed to achieve peace based on justice, it becomes imperative to seek other ways to resolve conflicts and foster long-lasting understanding and respect. Dialogue, especially among the different faiths that are partners to conflict, becomes one viable way to pursue on different levels. While conflict separates them, their faith and common points of their belief joins them. Through this, a point of commonality and humanity must be established to move forward while relying on our differences, which add diversity and richness. Christians, Muslims, and Jews, beyond their differences, recognize the dignity of the human person endowed with both rights and duties. Dialogue. What is dialogue? A simple dictionary definition of dialogue is to take part in a conversation or discussion to resolve a problem. However, today, we hope to achieve more than just a mere conversation amongst ourselves, perhaps relying on what Cardinal Jean-Louis Thoron, President of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, says, having a dialogue implies that we all reach some form of common language or common grounds. We also need to be very honest and communicate openly our viewpoints in a way to share our perspectives while at the same time being open to accept and understand others' points of view. Ignorance fosters misunderstanding and intolerance. Dialogue and education foster tolerance, respect, and development. It is with this aspiration and a sense of responsibility as agents of peace and as believers in the same God, in the one God, I welcome our esteemed panelists. Maybe we will start with Reverend Dr. Fahed Abu Akel, who was born in Kufr Yassif in the Galilee, and he became a citizen, American citizen in 1981. He was ordained minister of the Presbyterian Church in 1978 and has served on the mission staff of the First Presbyterian Church of Atlanta. I don't want to take too much in presenting them because our time is short and they will say for themselves. I mean, their message will be very clear. Anyway, Dr. Abu Akel has been honored for his life dedication to interfaith dialogue and international understanding by many organizations. The National Conference of Christians and Jews honored him with the Clergy of the Year Award. Dr. Akel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Is this mic on?
Yes.
Okay. Ratib, you promised sunshine and you delivered snow. So if you come to the holy city of Atlanta, we'll give you blue sky, sunshine, and a southern hospitality. So first I want to thank the pastor of this congregation, just been here for 2 months, the session, the mission committee, and all the members of National Presbyterian Church for hosting this conference and for supporting the ministry and mission of HCEF. Let's give them a big hand. I want to thank Ratib Rabbi, the staff, the board, and all the supporters for helping the church in the USA to know about Palestine and the Arab indigenous Christian church. Because of the American media and the ignorant Christian education, the majority of the American public and members of our congregations, when you say Arabs, they think about Muslims. When you say Israel, they think about Jews. And in a second, they eliminate where Christianity started. That's very dangerous Christian education. So Palestinian Christians in the American public square do not exist. That's the reason I love what basically this ecumenical foundation is doing. Any rational thinker knows that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, not New York. He grew up in Nazareth, not in Atlanta. He died for the forgiveness of our sin in Jerusalem, not in Washington, D.C. It's clear, you know, to all of us. And I think we need to be clear on that. Let me prove my point. In 2001, in the fall, Mrs. King invited me to do the invocation at the Martin Luther King birthday celebration in January 2002. That journalist had 3 journalistic evidences not to goof. Reverend, Presbyterian, and praying in the name of Jesus. You cannot open that brain more. Huh? So shallow journalistic work is very simplistic. Huh? Abu Akel is Arabic. Arabic is Muslim. God bless America. He introduced me to the nation as a Muslim Imam. So my wife, Mary, in Atlanta, had a sister in Tampa, Florida. And that's a day off for teachers. He's a teacher. So Samira calls Mary and says, Mary, did Fahed switch religion? Huh? So everywhere I go, I want to embarrass National Public Radio. Why? Because it's the smartest radio in America. Huh? Everyone touch the deal for 1 minute. National Public Radio massage the issue 5, 10, 20 minutes. And the smartest radio in America goofed. So Palestinian Arab Christians do not exist in the minds of the American people. As I think about the Presbyterian Church history, I immediately think, first, of course, we need to respect the Orthodox Church, the Catholic Church. That's the mother church. Presbyterian came there 200 years ago and put emphasis on evangelism, education, and also basically medical work. So every American university built in the Middle East, milled by the Presbyterian Church, the American University of Beirut, the American University in Cairo. And we are the largest Protestant body with 750,000 members. So when somebody says, why the Presbyterians know so much, we have a 200 years history. And we have an excellent mission theology. We are okay in Lebanon, we are okay in Syria, we are the largest in Egypt. And so when I think about the message of the gospel, it's very clear. The reason I want to give you this is because of the CARITAS document. I would say that the CARITAS document is a clear message from the Palestinian Christians, both for the first time, listen to that, for the first time, Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant came together and produced one document. They spent a whole year praying, talking, meeting, and discussing. So this is the classical, gut-level message of the Church of Palestine, basically to us in the United States of America. So the CARITAS document is a statement of faith, hope, and love from the heart of the Palestinian people who are suffering under occupation. The reason I love it, because they address the Palestinian Christians and Muslims. They address the Israeli Jewish, and for the Palestinian to live as equal with you in historic Palestine. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's going to be too late. If Israel wants the land without the people, that means we're going to have another ethnic cleansing, another Nakba, another moving to a direction that the Israeli public, and I hope the American public, will not accept. If that is the case, we are one family and we must coexist on the land. Finally, the universe this year reached 7 billion people. That means half of the population of the world are Christians and Muslims. If you have 50 million people will visit Jerusalem, Nazareth, and the Sea of Galilee, and go back to Europe, and go back to the United States, go back to where they came from, just spend 1 week, God Almighty will bless Israeli Jews, Palestinian Arabs with dollars more than the American dollar and the petrodollar. So we need to start dreaming. Unless the occupation ends.
Pulpit as a baby rabbi, which was not very long after the Israeli forces occupied the land that we're talking about. A friend of mine had said that there was a series of apparently secret meetings between Jewish leaders in the United States and someone associated with Yasser Arafat, Sabri Juris. I thought the opportunity to meet him in an apartment in New York was a wonderful idea, and I did so. Shortly after that, it turned out that the American Jewish community was very up in arms that Jewish leaders, even little rabbis, would meet with the enemy, and the identities of the people that met at a similar meeting in Washington were revealed, and they paid prices with this because the American Jewish community viewed that Jewish leaders shouldn't be talking with Palestinians. The names of the people in the New York meeting were never revealed, but I remained somewhat scared as a kid at that time that I had innocently stepped into something that was much larger than my ability to control. Religious leaders have been praying for peace for many years, but we're not any closer to peace. And I think honest dialogue, as my colleague mentioned, requires trusting one another to speak the truth about who we are. It is true that the prophet Isaiah says, or writes, about beating spears into pruning hooks and swords into plowshares. But what I have done in the past, and what many clerics do, is we cherry pick what we take from Scripture, because the prophet Isaiah, a little later on in the same passage, talks about beating pruning hooks into spears and beating plowshares into swords. Although I am a pacifist, I believe in dialogue and using words. I do not support war, do not support the occupation. I do not support the policies of the government of Israel on many issues, but I'm only one person. But I've read the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible, the Bible, from cover to cover, and if I read it objectively, there are lots of statements that are threatening, scary, and belligerent in Jewish and Christian scripture. I am very ignorant. I'm certainly not a scholar in the Holy Quran, but I have read it. And reading it out of ignorance, I also see passages there that I find threatening, scary, and belligerent, as well as passages that are hopeful and redemptive. So if there's a reason that religious leaders have not succeeded in overcoming armies and governments, it's because some seeds of hatred and enmity exist within our own traditions. If we're going to dialogue with one another, then we have to admit our frailty as humans, and the fact that as humans we embrace both love and we embrace hate because we embrace fear. I find as a religious Jew, as a believing Jew, that I have to find sources of guidance for myself and for my congregation. There is a passage in rabbinic literature, post-biblical literature, that talks about when the Messiah will come, when redemption will come. One of the sages says this will only occur when the world is either all good, following God's laws, or all evil, completely disregarding God's laws. All saints or all sinners. One of the other people in the dialogue says, well, wouldn't it make sense, rather than advocate, as we do, that people observe God's laws, that we advocate that all people become sinners because people are more likely to sin, and would that not bring the Messiah and bring the redemption? One of the other voices, a more psychological one, said, but that will not work, because just as it would seem that the Messiah is about to come, one bad person will begin observing commandments just to spoil it for everyone. We embed religious wisdom in stories, and we sometimes embed it in humor, because behind that joke, which we all recognize, an understanding of human nature, is a very sophisticated prescription for what it takes to have world peace. Because it can only occur if you have two ingredients: global acceptance and universal cooperation. Unless human cooperation is global, it can't work. Now, we're very, very far away from that kind of understanding. We as humans see each other as enemies, ethnicities, even fighting among congregations, which church is going to be more popular on which block, which synagogue, and so on. We're very, very far away from that notion of universal cooperation and trust. But that does not mean that we despair, because Jewish tradition says that we work for the coming of the Messiah, even though it may appear that the Messiah is not about to come. I think we share that notion of redemption, or hope for redemption, with all three of the Abrahamic faiths. Sometimes we argue whether it's the first coming or the second coming, but we're agreed that the Messianic age is not here, and we hope that one day it will be. So my approach, and what I tell my own members in my congregation, is that we make choices. I make choices as an individual. I make choices as a psychotherapist. I make choices as a pastor. We make choices as voters. We make choices as governments. We make choices as generals. So when faced with a choice, I must make that choice which would bring things one slight step closer to the coming of the Messiah. Whatever choice is in the direction of universal cooperation is the choice I must make. Right now, people are not making those choices in the Mideast. I'm glad I don't have to make those choices. I'm glad that I don't live in Israel or in Palestine. I'm very fortunate where I live. Most of the people we're talking about do not have the luxuries that I have. But the choices that are being made have to do with sovereignty, with safety, with protection. I do not know what will bring about the kind of reversal that we need. I do not know what it will take to overcome the anger, the suspicion, the fears. One of the first talks I ever gave in my congregation as a full-time rabbi, soon after the occupation, was my thought that Israel surely would not stay in these territories for long, because if they did, we would reach a situation within a generation that would be impossible to overcome. As a result of that, I was got in a lot of trouble as a rabbi for even implying that the decisions of the government of Israel were not wise. Unfortunately, my humble prediction has turned out to be true. I wish I had the answers for this. But if people of religion and religious leaders are to play a role in healing these wounds, then I think it will have to begin with an honest recognition of our histories and the history of religion as makers of war in the past, as likely as makers of peace in the future. And I think true dialogue means recognizing the humanity of each other. It means trusting one another, to be honest about who we are and what we need to do.
Thank you, and I hope that back home in our region, people will listen to your voice and what you have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. It is a pleasure for me to introduce Imam Yahya Hendi, whom I have met several times before. And he is the Muslim chaplain at Georgetown University, the first American university to hire a full-time Muslim chaplain. He also serves as a member of the Islamic Jurisprudence Council of North America. And he is very involved in inter-religious dialogue. Imam Hendi often visits and lectures at churches and synagogues, hoping to create a new positive relationship between the followers of the three Abrahamic religions. He is also the founder of and Secretary General of Clergy Beyond Borders, and a new organization, Imam, University, Dignity, Human Rights, and Dialogue. Thank you for being with us.
One second, take that other mic.
The Lord is good, huh? All the time. Let's do that. The Lord is good.
All the time.
All the time.
God is good.
One more time. The Lord is good.
All the time.
All the time. Good. Well, may the peace of the living God be with each and every one of us here this morning. And I really apologize for being late. It's snowing up in Frederick, Maryland, and across everywhere on 270 coming south. So please forgive me for that. Not intended. I always make the joke that, yes, I'm an imam, but I was trained to preach back in 1992 by a Baptist minister from Alabama. This is why I do not like to be contained by a chair or a table. I like to be free. And I like to move freely around because I believe in the Spirit when it moves us. Because we need to reclaim that spirit of love. We need to reclaim the Spirit of God in us. The spirit of love, the spirit of peace building, the spirit of bridge building. And if we can reclaim that soul, and if we can reclaim that spirit in us, maybe there will be hope, not only in the Middle East, but also around the world. We must not be contained or forced to be contained by a box that forces us to think as if others do not even exist. We have to be open to see the greatness of God and the greatness of the creation of God, who created not only the Jews, not only the Christians, not only the Muslims, but I would always say the Baha'is and the Sikh and the Hindus and the atheists and the seculars. God created all of them. Even if we clergy may like to claim, thank you. I say this all the time, that God is not a real estate agent, and that God is not an exclusive God, at least the God I studied from the Tanakh, the New Testament, and the Quran. It's a God who loves all that God created and embraces all things, and I believe that God has more love than us for our children. And if we are able to embrace our children all the time, all of them, God is able to do that much more than we are able. How can we allow that theology to transform our political language is the challenge. How can we allow that theology to transform the politics we use and the ethical paradigms that shape the way we speak of the Arab-Israeli conflict? They call us the children of Abraham. I'm sorry to say I disagree with that term. We are not the children of Abraham only. We're also the children of Sarah and Hagar. We're the children of women too. Always we speak about Jesus and we forget Mary. We speak about Muhammad and we forget Amina. We speak about Abraham and we forget Sarah and Hagar. And I say this because I mean to say that unless women within the Middle East and outside of the Middle East, unless women become active participants in the solution, there will be no solution for the Middle East crisis. The challenge of Ratib, maybe for the years to come, is to have more women present in the audience and more women speaking from the podium as well, more women leading. Recently I was asked about a great Palestinian leader I admire, and I said Hanan Ashrawi. And the question was, but she's a Christian. I said, what? Why should that really matter, whether she's a Christian or Muslim? I love Hanan because she is a great Palestinian leader, and I love Hanan because she's a woman, because I think women have to reclaim that position around the table because they have much more to offer, sometimes I believe, than men. Actually, we are called the children of Abraham because we have yet to grow up. And we need to grow up. We need to grow up to see God in a different way, to understand each other in a new spirit, with a new spirit. We need to grow up and act like adults. I always say that men do not have midlife crisis because they never grow up anyway. You only go through midlife crisis when you grow up, and men never grow up, so women do. So let women lead the way, and I really mean that. So when we speak about the role of economics in solving the Arab-Israeli conflict, I talk about women. When I was in Ramallah last year, I spoke to a Palestinian council of women, businesswomen. I forgot the exact name, the Palestinian National Council of Businesswomen, something like that. And I was so happy to know that such a council does exist, and we, the clergy, need to make that happen. I am concerned about the Middle East, not only of the Arab-Israeli conflict. I'm concerned because recently I started hearing of the voice Christian vis-a-vis Muslim in Egypt or in Iraq or in Syria. And I say that must not be allowed to happen in any way, shape, and form. I do not see Egypt with Muslims alone. I do not see Iraq with Muslims alone. Iraq is much better off with the Christians next to Muslims. And Egypt is much better off with the Christians next to Muslims. And the Holy Land is much better off with Jews, Christians, and Muslims next to one another. After all, we speak about Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Say he, God is one. In Hebrew, we talk about Elohino Echad, one God. Well, Elohino Echad, one God, Ilahun Wahid, must mean one family, one creation. In Hebrew, Mishbacha Echad, one God, one family. Why cannot the family put its act together and act like a family? Why can't we all be bothered when we fight one another as siblings? U.S. media, the concept of Ahlul Dhimma. What does Ahlul Dhimma really historically may have meant? People of covenant. Dhimma, what Rimma, when you say in Arabic, for those of you who know Arabic, Anta fi dhimmatillah, Anta fi dhimmati. Dhimma means covenant. You are in the protection of God because you are in a special relationship with the divine. So for me, Ahlul Dhimma refers not to Jews and Christians, but refers to Muslims, Jews, and Christians, because we are all in one covenant with God. And therefore, to honor our covenant with the Creator, we have to honor our covenant with one another. I can never be true to Jesus. I can never be true to Moses. I can never be true to Muhammad. I can never be true to my specific religious community and its creed if I am not true to you. I am not respectful of you. So how can the Jews of the Holy Land not only speak about it, but make their theology become a part of politics on the ground? Because mastering the art of listening is quite important to solve the conflict. Number two, we need not only to speak, but also to act. So I'm not interested in asking, oh, I love you, good kisses, good hugs, let's go home. I'm not interested in this anymore. And now I'm interested in having actual positions from our communities that are transformed into politics on the ground. That's it. Number three, we need to engage youth. We need to engage women. We need to engage clergy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yahya, for this presentation. But talking about women, let me remind you that this year, 3 women got the Nobel Peace Prize. And maybe the bishop will allow me to quote from what he said in one of his homilies. Is God a candidate to the Nobel Peace Prize? I'm quoting Bishop homily. But also, I like to share with you, when you talked about religions, to share with you what one day Steve Jobs said. Different religions are different doors to the same house.
Amen.
Thank you very much for our 3 speakers, and I think we have time for just 2 questions. Okay, I have one. Sorry, please go ahead.
We need a mic.
Yes, this mic is very bad, I think.
I need a question, not a lecture.
My name is Fahed Khoury. I am the pastor of the Arabic Church of the Redeemer in Washington, D.C. And I'm very grateful to the Reverend Abu Akel for bringing along with him a document called CARITAS, which has been prepared by the Christian leadership in the Holy Land. For the first time, we have come with a document that speaks the voice of peace and justice. And it is very well done, very well written. My question to our rabbi here, have you as a Jewish community and have you as an Israeli government given this document a serious consideration to be basis for peace to come in the future? Thank you.
Well, I am not the Israeli government, and I am not the Jewish community. And one of the barriers for Christian, Muslim, and Jewish clerics in the United States is that we are often called upon to undertake roles that are not appropriate for who we are.